Part 107 is specifically for drones that weigh less than 55 pounds, but one of the stipulations within Part 107 states that operations or operators cannot fly a drone with hazardous chemical on board or hazardous material on board. Now that includes, for especially farmers, drones that may apply herbicide or pesticide to their row crops or perhaps their pastures as well. Now the FAA does allow these operations, but it would fall outside of the Part 107 regulations. In order for an operator to begin those operations, they would have to receive what's called a Section 44807 exemption, which would allow them to carry that hazardous material or hazardous chemical on board the drone. And the second thing that they would have to receive is what's called a Part 137 aircraft or agricultural aircraft operator's certificate. Now that's a fairly simple process for the Part 137 certificate, but the 44807 exemption can take several months for an operator to start to build that documentation in order to submit it to the FAA. So we recommend starting that perhaps one growing season or one season ahead of time to ensure that you are ready when the time comes. Now, one other important note is that along with the 44807 exemption, once you receive your approval from the FAA, you will have a number of provisions that you must operate in accordance with. Very similar to Part 107, they could include not flying higher than 400 feet above the ground, not flying so close to specific airports, filing notices to other pilots in the area, and again, perhaps for the pilots, having a specific requirement for their medical certificate, something that's not really spoken about under Part 107. Lastly, that 44807 exemption would also require that the operator has a valid Part 107 certificate, otherwise known as the Remote Pilot and Command Certificate. So it's still important that that operator receives that Part 107 training and Part 107 certificate to go along with it. Now, once all of that is said and done, that's only the FAA's side of things. You still have your state applicators requirements that perhaps here in Kansas, for instance, you would have the Kansas Department of Agriculture overseeing those particular regulations.